Hey, what's going on, everybody? Timmy, aka Ecoside Fiend here. I hope everybody's having a good weekend so far. I've been having a pretty good weekend. I was supposed to have a 3-day weekend. I ended up getting called in to work for a few hours yesterday. About 3.5 hours, wasn't too bad. And it was all overtime too, because I was already on at about 7 or 8 hours of overtime. But what happened was one of my fellow drivers. His Friday route is all right around my apartment, around the area, and he aggravated an old injury, I think, in his shoulder, and he was having a hard time finishing his route. Like his shoulder was sore. It wasn't like he was like crippled or anything, but it was sore, and he wanted to be able to get done so he could get to the doctor and get it X-rayed. And so his service manager ended up calling me and asking if I could meet up with him and help him finish. And they said, like, when you leave, text us right when you leave, and we'll start paying you right from the time you leave your apartment until you get back. And so I ended up calling the driver, Jim, his name is, and he was right nearby. So he's like, I'll just come and pick you up. So I didn't even have to drive anywhere. He was able to just come and get me with the truck, and got out and helped him finish up. So that was good. And then it added quite a bit of, another 3 hours to already a lot of hours. So my next paycheck is going to be pretty good size. So that'll be pretty cool. I'm looking forward to that. I'll probably end up taking all the overtime from that and putting it into my fund for my Hollowicked trip coming up in obviously October. So then I'm also looking forward to tomorrow, because tomorrow is WWE SummerSlam 2017. Love SummerSlam. It's always ends up being one of my favorites. I think mainly just because it holds a little bit of a special place in my heart for two reasons. One, because that's the very first pay-per-view that I ever bought. Like as a wrestling fan, I bought it and had some friends over to watch it. I was 13. SummerSlam 1990. And the main event was Ultimate Warrior versus Ravishing Recruit for the WWF Championship in a steel cage. And then the other match that really stood out to me was the Hart Foundation versus Demolition for the WWF Tag Team Championships. And that was a best of 3 falls match. And Bret Hart is my favorite wrestler of all time. And then Demolition's awesome. And Jim Neidhart's awesome too. So I loved that match. And I was a golf caddy at the time, so I had to keep my earnings for probably about 3 weeks, to get the pay-per-view, and then had some friends over, so that was a lot of fun. And then in 2005, I also went to SummerSlam in Washington, D.C. I went with a couple of my buddies. We flew out there, and that was cool. That was the main event was Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan. That was the one where behind the scenes, apparently Shawn Michaels was not happy that he had to job for Hogan, and so he intentionally sabotaged the match by overselling everything. He'd like whip him into the turnbuckles, and he'd go flopping over and out to the floor and stuff. He was just like making it look as ridiculous as possible to make Hogan look like a jackass, I guess. I don't know, but it was cool. It was a good match still, but it was just kind of funny to be there to witness it live. So that was a lot of fun. So so SummerSlam is always one that I really enjoy watching. This one I'm not really. I'm kind of behind on Raw and SmackDown. I'm actually going to stay home tonight and watch both Raw and SmackDown from this past week and possibly the week before too, so I can get all caught up. I'm not even 100% sure what matches like tomorrow. I gotta look that over and see what I'm in for. So, but I'm gonna watch it. We're gonna be watching it at a friend's house. Normally I host him here. But a friend of mine he's got like a 60-inch, HD TV. My TV's not small. I got like a 45-inch, but his is 60, so that'll be even more fun. So we're gonna watch it over there. Use my network login to get it over there. So that'll be a lot of fun. Get together with my buddies, have a few beers. It's always a good time. So, but that kind of leads into what I want to talk about. I'm pretty sure anybody who's been watching any of my videos, started a couple months ago, can probably tell that I'm a huge pro wrestling fan. I think all but one of my videos I'm wearing a wrestling related t-shirt, and that's generally how I dress too. It's almost all my shirts are wrestling related. I've got a few of my old skateboarding shirts, and I've got quite a few Juggalo related ones too, whether it be ICP or Twisted, but the majority of my shirt collection is wrestling, and it's WWE, Ring of Honor, Indie. I got New Japan, you know, like I said, a lot of indie guys have got. There's a company that does shows around here all the time called Pure Pro Wrestling, PPW. If you feel like looking them up, they bring in Zach Gowen quite a bit. They bring in some pretty big names. They've had Zach Gowen, and they had Gregory Irons, so the handicapped heroes were there a few weeks ago. They had Rhino, one of the first ones I went to. Rhino was there, and then just a couple weeks later, he was back on SmackDown, so that was pretty cool. So yeah, they've had Ray Orndorff, his brother Paul Orndorff. He's been with them quite a few times. But there's a tag team in that in that company. One of them's actually a hardcore juggalo. He's got tattoos. He's got a Dark Lotus cross and Hatchet Man and stuff. But I'm not like friends with them, but I'm acquainted with them. But they're called the Nomads. So I've got a shirt of them. I got a couple of their shirts. So a lot of pro wrestling shirts, and you know, that's it's a huge part of my life. It's you know, one of my, like, pretty much like the one TV show that I can't miss. Like I said, I kind of fallen behind a little bit. I'll miss an episode here and there, but I mean, even if I miss it, I'm usually reading results, looking at the magazines, internet, anything to find out what's going on. So it's like one of those things where it's just like deeply ingrained in me, and I got to see it. I always watch the pay-per-views. I don't miss those. I got the WWE Network. You know, I watch. I'll come home and if there's nothing on that I want to have cable, but if there's nothing that I feel like watching, I'll grab some old pay-per-view and watch it. You know, and I've been a fan. I'm gonna say since I was probably about 11. I had seen it before that because my mom's dad watched it, but I remember seeing it with him, but it wasn't anything that I was like, you know, I saw it and I was like, oh, I got to dig more into this. But he passed away when I was 7, and then once he was gone, I never really thought about it again until I came across it after we got cable at our house. And so I was about 11, and then my neighbor, it was like my best friend growing up, and we're still friends. I'm just a couple months older than him. He lived right through the woods from me. He got into it, so we started getting the pay-per-views, and you know, we'd walk up to the town of in a little downtown area of Belmont, and there's a grocery store there that's still there. But at the time they carried magazines. They don't anymore, to the best of my knowledge. But they carried WWF, and so we'd go up and get the new WWF magazine when it came out. We'd walk up there, make a whole day out of it, you know, and go to see them if they came to town. They came to the Welsh Auditorium a few times, and so we always went to those. And then when I was like 16, when I started working at the Rio Grande restaurant, and I had started skateboarding when I was like 11, but it was a big part of my life as well. But it was more like we'd just kind of go skating around the town. Then I got a driver's license when I was 16, and then I was gone all the time. I was downtown skating, downtown Grand Rapids, going to skate parks if we could find them. And then when I was 17, I bought a snowboard, and then forget about it. I mean, if it was dry outside, I was skateboarding, and if it was snowing, I was snowboarding. You know, and our VCR was like Stone Age, so I couldn't I couldn't figure out how to program it, so I could record something while somebody else was watching something, you know. So my mom's like, I'm not going to sit here and watch wrestling while you're at work, you know. And I was always scheduled to work Monday nights. It wasn't Monday Night Raw yet, but it was Monday Night Wrestling, it was called. And so I just kind of ended up falling behind, but I always kept up with who the champions were. I'd grab a magazine and thumb through it, see who the big names were, and if they came to town, I always went. So when I was 21, then I started going to community college and started at the job I'm at now. Started with the company that I'm at now, but I worked second shift. And at that time, we had a new VCR, and it had on-screen programming and all that. So I kind of like, well, I'm going to start keeping up with wrestling again. You know, set it to start taping WWF. I still didn't give a fuck about WCW. I still don't. I mean, obviously they're gone now, but I mean, even when they were around, and I don't even care about any of it that's on the network. I just thought they were garbage, so I was always WWF. So I just record Raw, and then when SmackDown started, when I was like 22, so I started watching that. So then I got back into it and really started following it, you know. And that's during that time. That's when I met the guys that I went to SummerSlam 2005 with, and those guys actually, it's pretty cool. The Knucks that John Cena used to wear, you know, he wore them over his fingers, and they said "Word Life." Every pair of those you saw, these two guys made, Todd and Jeff. They were made right here in Grand Rapids. They both worked at Tool and Die. They didn't work at the same place, but they made them, and then they had a friend or a business partner or something painted them for them. And every pair, if you saw them in magazines, the ones he used in the match when he hit the Big Show, all that, those were from Todd and Jeff from right here in Grand Rapids. And they got the patent bought from them too, WWF. was it WWF at the time, WWE, whatever it was. I think it was WWE already. They bought the patent from them so they could make foam ones and stuff and put them in video games. And they have action figures. I've actually got one out there sitting on my TV stand, a John Cena figure with the Nux on them, and those are Todd and Jeff. That was their idea. They made them, and so that was really cool. So I started kind of going around to a lot of shows with them. Whether it was local or just a day drive or a long trip. We went to SummerSlam, and so it was a huge thing. It still is. I love it. I love all the theatrics of it. I love the backstage politics. I love reading about that, even if it's bad politics. There's something that that just captivates me, knowing that stuff is going on backstage. And one of my favorite stories was when CM Punk, who's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, he when he was going to be leaving the company possibly, and then they put the championship on him at the tables, ladders, chairs. I think it was 2011. And if you read about it, literally right up till just a few minutes before that, I think it was 20 minutes, they said, before him and Cena went through the curtain for their match, him and Cena were, and Vince were, in an office, discussing whether he was going to resign with them or not. They ended up getting him to resign, and, he signed his contract or whatever, and then they planned the match, and then went through the curtain and had their match. So all of us that were, people that were at the arena, those of us who were watching at home, we're sitting there enjoying the event, not knowing that this, major thing is going on backstage. I love that, And so when I became a fan of ICP, when I was 18, it still took a little while before I had any idea that they were wrestling fans. But it's funny, pretty quickly, I was like, man, these guys would make good wrestling characters, having no idea that they were fans or that they were, I don't know if they're trained, but learned to wrestle on their own, whatever. They were trained wrestlers anyway, I guess you could say. And then JCW and all that hadn't come out yet, but at that point when I got into them, but still, having no idea that they had that connection to the, to the industry, not the industry yet, but to the fandom of the industry, and then becoming connected to the industry. And I don't even remember how I found out. I don't know if I read about it or if I just picked up on it in their music or whatever, but when I did find out that they were fans, I was like, that's even cooler, because this is something that I really enjoy, and then to know that this band that I love also enjoys it, and then to kind of having even just got that feeling that they were fans, when I was like, man, that'd be good wrestling characters. I was kind of whoa, cool, they really are, fans. And I've been to JCW events a few times, and those are fun. I've seen them at the Juggalo Day a couple times. They did a show at the Orbit Room a couple years back. They had Colt Cabana and everybody was there, and ICP hosted it. They didn't wrestle, but they hosted it, so that was fun. And one thing I think, and I think maybe this is maybe a similar for a lot of Juggalos, but one thing for me being a wrestling fan, I've always liked the theatrics of it. I love the entrance music and their entrances in general, the fireworks and the video board and all that stuff. And then when they get in the ring, knowing that they're working together, it's very theatrical. And and knowing that they're working together, they don't want to hurt each other, they know what they're going to be doing. The high spots, they're all planned out. I love that. I love that they get out there knowing what's going to happen, and knowing that they could get hurt, and knowing they could get severely hurt. They probably will get hurt just being in the match, but knowing that they could get hurt, but they still do it anyway because of their, majority of them, the wrestlers, have a dedication to the craft. A lot of them might just be there for money, but I would think it's a safe assumption the majority of them are there because they love it, love the business, they respect it, and I love that they're willing to do that to put on a good match, put on a good show. And just the whole pageantry, the theatrics. And I know this is a quote, if you've seen Beyond the Mat, the documentary, the Barry Blaustein, I think, he makes a comment in it where he goes, he says that wrestling is theater at its most base, and I think that's completely true. And then I also think that's one thing that I love about ICP, whether you're talking about the horror aspect that I do like, or the wicked shit. I love that. But I like the theatrics of of just them in general. I mean, just ICP themselves are very theatrical, and then you go to their show and it's crazy theatrical. And I love that. And I think maybe that's kind of what, I probably don't even think it is, I would say, one of the things that I love about, wrestling and ICP, they're both very similar, and then to find out that ICP really are fans of pro wrestling, I think that really drew me to them, and then that solidified my fandom of each one, to know that wrestling is something I love, and then this band that I also love are also fans of it, so it just kind of brought those two worlds together. And then as you become a fan of ICP, you find out, yes, they have their Stranglemania, their JCW, the Hellfire Wrestling they had before, and then in Violent J's book, that whole chapter, I think it was Taking Bumps, I think was the name of it, and it's all about wrestling. And I'm like, I've read the book several times, and I love that chapter when I get to it, and or even some of the other books, like Mick Foley, one of his books, he has a whole segment about them, and not a chapter, but a couple pages, and then Terry Funk in his book too has a couple pages where they came to visit him at their ranch, and it's just cool, to see those two worlds collide, and I think that's one of the things that keeps me a fan of both of them. I mean, I think I always would be anyway, but just to know that these two things that I love are very intertwined, and then obviously in the Juggalo culture, you find a lot of other, Juggalos that are fans, like Crazy McCormick. I know him, personally in real life, and he's a big fan as well, and we've had a lot of discussions on Messenger and everything about it, and it's cool. And I don't know Dave Mania personally, but I know he's a big fan. We're friends on Facebook, so it's kind of cool to talk back and forth about it from time to time. And but I also know a lot of Juggalos that don't like it. My buddy Kyle, he's always making gay jokes about it, and like calling me a fag because they're like, "Oh, you watch your half-naked, boys rolling around the ring and stuff." But I always say to that, though, I say, well, homosexuality is in the eye of the beholder, because when I watch wrestling, I just see an exciting match. I don't know what it is you see, but but we're just goofing around. I mean, he doesn't mean anything by it, but so yeah, it's always been a cool. Just a cool thing that ICP and pro wrestling are so intertwined, and for me to have been a fan of pro wrestling for a lot longer than ICP, and then to find ICP and find out that they're so closely connected to the wrestling business. I've always found that really interesting. And there was one time I was actually at a SmackDown at the Joe Louis Arena in Detroit, and a couple days later I called the ICP hotline for something, and Jay had updated it, and him and Shaggy were at the event. They were up in one of the suites or whatever, and he was doing the update on the hotline, and you could hear it was Kurt Angle coming out. And I remember him, Jay, saying, like, he got all done with whatever he was talking about, and he's like, all right, no, he's like, now that I'm all done, I'm going to hold the phone out so you can hear this entire crowd tell Kurt Angle that he sucks. And then he held the phone out, and you could hear everybody chanting, and I was like, dude, I was there at the arena, to know that, like, they were there at the same time. And I was wearing, not this hat, because I just got this a little while ago, but I was wearing a wrestling shirt, but I was wearing a psychopathic hat of some kind, and I was kind of like, man, that would have been cool if I'd have run into them, and they had seen me or something, but it was really cool. I love that. I love knowing that they're fans, and that's something that's very near and dear to me. It's also very near and dear to them, and so it's really cool. So that's pretty much all I want to talk about. I know it's not really any major information here, but just kind of like my thoughts on like how I feel about them being part of the industry and everything. So if anybody else has any stories to share about wrestling or anything, maybe make a response video or maybe leave a comment or something, it'd be cool. So as always, thank you for watching. I'm still fairly new to this, and to see my view counts rise and the subscriber rate rise is really cool. It's making this really worth it, and it means a lot to me. I just appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to what I have to say. Yeah, it's very, very much appreciated. Please know that. So until then, I'm Timmy, aka Echoside Fiend, and I will catch you in the next one.